Hi, and welcome back to Literary Hype. I am Stephanie, your literary hype woman, and today in my Author Chats series, we have a romance writer who's getting a lot of buzz right now for her male protagonist. His name is Prince Jameson. You might know him from the American Royalty book. It is by Tracey Livesay, and today we're talking to her about all things spice and royal romance, and I'm trying to get some details on her future projects. Let's be real. I'm trying really hard for you. So here's my conversation with Tracey Livesay. Hello.
How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Good.
Welcome to Literary Hype.
I know. Yay.
So happy to have you on. This is gonna be so much fun.
Yes, I am very excited. Yay.
To start off, we started talking on social media after I posted a picture of reading your book while at Buffalo Wild Wings. So I want to know, what is your favorite Buffalo Wild Wings sauce?
Okay. There's two. So I like medium, which I know is kind of boring, but I also like the honey barbecue. So it just depends on what I'm getting. So if I'm doing, like, my favorite is the crispy chicken wrap, I'll get the medium with extra sauce. But if I'm doing like chicken tenders or something like that, then I'll get the honey barbecue. But those are my favorite.
A little spice in there.
Just a little, yes. Now
a lot less spice than your books.
Yes, way less. Now my son, my oldest son, we are BW3 people. I call it BW3 because that's I'm that old. But my oldest gets like the habanero, like he goes hot all the time, and I'm just like, and he suffers, but it doesn't matter. I guess he likes the taste and it's so much. He goes super hot, but yeah, I stay medium.
We'd be friends then, because I get wild and occasionally get blazing.
Ooh.
I went to B-dubs with some friends from work and got the wild. They were like, "Oh, you can get two sauces." I was like, "Fine, I'll get the blazing." And the waiter came back. They're like watching me like, "Okay." And the waiter came back. He's like, "You're not crying. You're not snotting. This is no fun for me." Got to keep my red hair red. Buffalo Wild Wings is one of my favorites, and so that
so good.
It's like when you started talking to me about B-dubs, I knew we'd be friends.
Yes, lots. Yes, pandemic, lots of takeout from BW3. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So I guess now start talking about the spicy book, American Royalty. Just give us a little introduction to what this story is.
So American Royalty is a contemporary romance about an American rapper named Duchess, Danny, who is an up-and-coming rapper, really popular. Not quite at the top, but like on the rise. But she also has a skincare business that's really sort of important to her. And it's sort of like how she plans to transition from the music industry for like the rest of her life, because she knows that's pretty much what she wants to do. And she gets into this faux feud with this pop star, this one-hit wonder who is not making more music, but still wants to be famous and popular. And so she sort of picks a fight with Duchess, and Duchess doesn't respond, but the media gets a hold of it, and suddenly Duchess finds herself in the midst of this scandal, which is affecting a big contract with her skincare line. And so she's in need of some serious good PR. And when she's invited to perform at this royal tribute concert as one of the few, sort of the only rap act and one of the few younger acts, she's like, this will be great. I've got to take advantage of this. Meanwhile, she was invited by Prince Jameson, who is the grandson of the Queen, who has never been a part of the spotlight, not interested in it at all. He's actually a professor, and he is one of the few royals who has managed to sort of stay scandal free. But now with the British public sort of questioning whether or not they even need a monarch, the Queen is like, this is tough times. We've got to do something. I need to get people feeling us again. So we're going to throw this tribute concert for my late husband, who was very popular, and that'll make people love us and, you know, remember why they want us here in the first place. And because her children are such are not doing very well in the media, she drafts her grandson to be the face of the event, and she tasks him with picking some of the musical acts. And he's not into it, not interested. And when the name Duchess is sort of floated to him, he's like, oh, that would be cute. Someone named Duchess performing for the royal concert. She's probably a pop star. Fine, you know, job done. And little does he know who he has invited until they meet and sparks fly, and it goes from there. That wasn't so brief, but that's essentially what it is.
Solid setup of the motivations on both sides and how this came to be.
Yeah, that's what it is.
There's some pretty obvious parallels to Harry and Meghan. Was that something you were kind of concerned about or fully leaned into? Kind of pulling something that's so buzzy in our media right now?
Right. I was surprised at how much my publisher relied on them for marketing, which is very smart. You know, it's a very sort of easy way to say, if you are interested in this type of, you know, if you like royal romance, it's given really sort of Harry and Meghan vibes. And it does sort of in the surface level, and that, you know, he is a member of the British royal family, and she is, you know, an African-American entertainer from, you know, the States. Like on that level, that's the, you know, that's an easy inspiration. But I didn't really lean into it too much in the story, because I think I've sort of I think what I did with Dani is what the British press was trying to do with Meghan, and what she is not, right? Is make her out to be like, you know, she is this outrageous Black woman straight out of Compton, you know, all of that sort of that racially tinged rhetoric that was coming from them. And so, and Meghan is not that by any stretch of the imagination, but it interested me to see to think about how they would react if they got something a little closer to that. Like there was, you know, all of this sort of discourse about who Meghan was, and the fact that she was biracial. I thought, okay, well, what if she was not only, you know, dark-skinned Black woman, but she's a rapper and she's very sexual. I really sort of was interested in not shying away from that in this story. So they're not, you don't follow them throughout the whole story. Like that's not really Harry and Meghan, but it's an easy sort of in if you're interested in royal romance, I think.
How much research went into preparing to write a story about the royal family?
A lot, actually. I do a lot of sort of research and planning because I am a plotter before I write most of my books. But a lot went into the story. So not only the royal family, but sort of Dani and the music industry and the rap genre in particular. I do a lot of research on that. The royal family stuff was insane. Like I thought I knew a lot. I read historical romance, you know. I have an understanding of sort of how the aristocracy works in historical romance, and I thought it was sort of like a one-to-one correlation, like I followed the royal family in that American way that we do. And so I mean, I did some research in the beginning, but I legitimately thought that that was not going to be the hardest part. It turned out to be the hardest part. There's just so many intricacies and so many little protocol things that we just don't know, that I didn't know. And I remember I'd written, not my first draft, because no one sees my first draft, but like 2.5, draft 2.5. And I gave it to Sarah McLean, who's a really good friend of mine, to read. And she, yes, I'm so excited for that book. Oh my God, I love her so much. And she writes historical romance, and so I sent it to her to read, and she was so lovely about, sure, like the story and the chemistry. Yeah, that's great. But Tracey, we got to work on some of this, some of this royal stuff. And I'm like, what? And let's just say, like, I thanked her in my acknowledgments, because we really did spend hours on the phone with stuff. And she debriefed me after she read the book and gave me some stuff, which I definitely took into consideration. But then as I was writing later, I'd be like, well, what would happen in this situation? And I tried to Google as much as I could, but in the end, sometimes I would just pick up the phone and say, okay, Sarah, this is what's happening here. What do I have to do? Or what does he do? Or what would she say? It's really involved. Yeah, it was a lot. And then in addition to just sort of that sort of research, I also just read a lot. Read a lot of nonfiction books, which I actually enjoy doing, but I hadn't done that before. So I feel like I've had like a little education in the royal family. Yeah.
And I love that mention of the hours that you spent on the phone with Sarah and the acknowledgments. And you also brought up another author, Mia Souza. How important and valuable is that writers community for you?
It is so important. I remember when I first joined RWA, and I'd go to a conference. I think it was my first or second conference. And I remember published authors talking about other published authors. And so these would be names that I knew, that I've seen in the bookstore. And they would say how they had met this author, they were both sort of like at the same point in their career, and they met, and they've been sort of like a resource or best friends, and how, saying to us, you will do that too. Like, you will meet authors and they will become your community. And I remember being so excited for that to happen. Like, I wanted that to happen, but it's just like everything else. You can't force relationships and communities. It almost feels like going to high school or college again, because you have to meet people and you have to get to know them and you have to sort of be vulnerable. And when I started trying to be published, I was in my late 30s. So I was like, I've had my friends. Like, I'm not trying to make new friends. But I'm so thankful that I did, because it can be very solitary when you're writing and drafting. But you need those other people. You need people you can bounce ideas off of. You need people who are, I believe, who are honest with you, who can tell you whether something is working or not. And not only whether it's working, but how it is or isn't working. So if something's not working, it's not enough to say I don't like this character, or I don't like this scene, but what is wrong with it? Or like, how can I fix it? What's the thing that's bothering you? But in addition to that, the industry it's really tough, and you don't really know that till you get into it. What I say now is, when you are first starting and you're first starting to be published, and you look at someone who's published, it looks like a mountain, and you think, I'm climbing, I'm doing all the steps, and you get published, and you're like, whoo, I'm at the top of the mountain. But what happens is you get to that, it's like, oh no, this is a summit. There's still like a whole nother mountain to climb. That's the publishing industry, and it's tough, and you need other people who are going through it with you, who understand, so that you can talk to them and they can give you advice. Or sometimes, like Nyla is with Danny, that old honey no friend, like you're feeling frustrated and you just maybe want to send off a tweet, or you want to put something on Instagram, and you need a friend that's like, sweetie, no, like right now you're upset, or right now it's stressful, but this is not on brand for you, or this is not going to be good for your career. Do not post that. The writers community is it's so important. I wouldn't be here without them, because I don't know, I don't know if I'd been able to hang in there with all the things you have to go through if I didn't have people that I trust, that I can talk to, who I know have my back. It's really important.
What's the best writing advice you've gotten from a fellow writer or someone else in the industry?
I think the best writing advice I've sort of cobbled together, is essentially to trust your voice and to write your story. That's been the best thing for me. I know that there are authors who write to market. I know there are authors who dabble in lots of different areas and genres. But for me, learning to trust my voice, learning what genre works best for me, what ideas work best for me, sticking to the type of heroines I write, sticking to writing interracial, like all of those things I've sort of come into and have accepted that this isn't the lane that I'm going to ride in. And there are other lanes, and I might be interested in other lanes, but trusting that this is the lane for me has been the best advice that I've gotten and that I've listened to. Because sometimes you get advice and you're like, eh. But that's been, I think, the best.
You started out in law. How did you end up flipping that into a creative career where you're writing romance?
It's really funny. I've always been a creative person. Like, I've been reading since I was very young. I've always been a big writer as well. I wrote poetry and short stories and plays for my church. And I mean, I've always had this creative streak. And my father was very creative as well. I mean, he was a painter. And so I grew up, in a house full of his paintings. So there was always this creative part of me, but I also grew up in a lower middle class household. And my dad had gone to college, and it was just stressed to me that you were going to go to college. Like, I always knew that there was this path. It was high school and then college and then something beyond. At one point, I thought it might have been medical school. It turned out to be law school, but there was just no thought that there would be anything creative that I was going to do for a career. That was always a nice hobby, something you could do to be fulfilling, but your career was going to be something where you could take care of yourself and as necessary. And so I did that, and I actually enjoyed being an attorney. I see sort of in my life that there was sort of like the two roads. Like, I could have gone this way. I still could have seen myself practicing law and being happy at it. it just so happened that my life, I had to make some choices with regards to my children. Two of them has medical issues, and my husband and I made the decision that one of us needed to stay home to take care of them, and that was me. And during those years, I continued to read romance novels. They got me through. And I think at some point I thought, maybe could I try to write these? I don't know. But I do know that when my youngest went back to started full day kindergarten, I was like, I've got to go back to work because I was, that's the type of person that I was. And as much as I think I made the right decision to stay home, I needed to sort of get back to me, if that makes sense. And I talked to my husband and I said, I'm will go back to a legal job, but I've been sort of researching and looking into, the publishing industry, and I really would like to try to write. And we've been living on one income for a while, so can this might be a good time for me to try, my thinking being that if, it's a year or two or three or whatever, if I got into it and it wasn't working, I would just go back to law. And it just so happened that it worked out, and I didn't have to. I got to do what I have loved doing. I'm very sort of fortunate in that way, and that's how I got here.
What are some of the biggest challenges of writing romance for you?
What's really difficult, I've found, is not so much the actual craft of writing, which I really, really enjoy and find challenging. It's the marketing and it's the getting out into the world, right? There are so many books, and trying to stand out in that has been very difficult. That's been the hardest part. Like I thought that I would just write the book and then I turn it over, and then, like the publishing company would do the rest. I went to the Angela Lansbury School of Publishing. I watched Murder, She Wrote. I saw how she did it. I thought that was going to work for me. That I would, go on lunch with my editor, and then I'd be sent on multi-book tours and solve some murders along the way. But that didn't really happen. It was a lot more marketing than I thought. And that has been challenging. And what has also been challenging is getting readers to give a book a chance that has a woman of color on the cover. That surprised me how challenging that can be.
Okay, well, let's keep going with challenges.
Okay.
So this book has got a lot of spicy scenes in it.
Yes.
Shall we say? How did you really hone that craft and overcome the challenges of writing those steamy scenes?
I have never shied away from a steamy scene. I knew from the moment I wrote my first romance like that I was going to have steamy scenes in my book. I never was interested in closed door romance, and I approached it like everything else. Like it's a craft, and so it takes research. It takes figuring out what you like, which you do by reading a lot of other people's. And I think it takes a little bit of creativity, because like everything else, it can get a little old. So you have to think of different ways to spice things up. I will admit that I don't write them in the first draft. I just put like insert sex scene here, and if I have like an idea of what kind of scene it would be, like for the bathtub scene, I do all the little setup, and then I'd be like, bathtub sex scene here, and then I keep on going, and I usually will do a pass towards the end where I will go through and then write all of the sex scenes. Yeah. Because you want them to be not only spicy, but you want it to advance the plot. You want it to be crucial to who those characters are. And usually, as I'm writing my first draft, I'm still learning who they are. And so if I just sort of wrote that scene as I'm writing, it wouldn't be specific to who the two characters are. So I do find that it's better for me to have gone through and gotten to know them a bit better, so that then I can go back and the scene feels like it's specific to those two characters.
Makes sense. Makes sense. And with Dani and Jameson's story, music is pretty core since she's a musician. And you've included a playlist. How much fun was it to put that together?
I've never done that before because I don't tend to listen to music when I write, because I love music so much, and I have lots of playlists, but they are all songs that I know and all songs that I can sing loudly. And so what happens is if I put on, I've tried before, but if I put on music while I'm writing, I start singing, and then it takes me out of what I'm doing. I've even tried to do like instrumentals, like movie soundtracks, but then it just takes my mind back to what scene that was in the movie, and it's just no good. So I can't write to music. But when I knew sort of what kind of rapper Dani was going to be, who Duchess was going to be, I listened to a lot of rappers that I thought would be in the vein of who Duchess would be. So I listened to a lot of Cardi B, a lot of Megan Thee Stallion, a lot of Doja Cat, Saweetie, Lizzo. Like I listened to like them all the time because I just wanted to get into that headspace. And then when I was drafting, I knew that I wanted each chapter to have like a rap lyric. I knew that I wanted that rap lyric to sort of give an idea of what the chapter was going to be about when it was in Dani's point of view. And I also wanted it to be chronological, to sort of also give you a history, so like an arc of or evolution of female rappers in the hip hop genre. And so the playlist that what I'm calling the American Royalty playlist came from those original lyrics. So the lyrics that are in the book now, I made up, but in the beginning, I actually found like lyrics from songs, and those were the headers for the chapters, until my editor reminded me, what she does all the time, and somehow I forget every book. I don't even know what I can't even, it must be, it's something mental. But every time she reminded me again, we cannot just print lyrics in a book. We have to get permission. Either, we have to get permission or we have to pay for it, one or the other. And I had forgotten that. And I had done so much work, when I tell you, to find the perfect lyrics and to put them in chronological order. And when she reminded me of that, I was devastated. But I was so tied to this idea of having lyrics be the headers for Dani's chapter, that I actually sort of did the work to try to get permission to use all of those lyrics. And it was way too expensive. Like, it was insane how much it was going to cost. And so I had a good author, speaking of the writing community, a good author friend who said, you could write Dani's lyrics. Why don't you try to do that? And I was like, are you kidding me? I can't do that. It scared the crap out. I was like, I can't, no. But I couldn't let it go. I could not let that go. And so I buckled down and did it. And then the songs, the lyrics from the songs, I didn't want to lose those because I thought they told a story as well. So then that became the American Royalty playlist. Like a long answer, but that's how the playlist came about. And it's just when we were talking earlier about research, like doing the research for that part was so wonderful because it revived sort of my respect and admiration for female rappers, which I lost. I've sort of bought into that whole there can be only one at a time, and bought into some of the narratives about some of these female rappers, and you just realize how much harder it is for them. For every sort of one female rapper, there's 20 guys who aren't as good, but still, they get more coverage, more money.
So I did want to talk about this beautiful cover.
Yes.
So much of the romance industry right now is like the cutesy, cartoony covers. And this one's more of a realistic picture. It's still drawing, but it's more realistic. Was there a conversation that went into that decision, or did you push for it to be more realistic, or how did this artwork come about?
Well, I knew that this was going to be a trade. This was going to be my first sort of trade paperback. And I, of course, knew that illustrated covers was big. And I had seen a few authors try to do photos for their trades, and it just didn't hit the same. I think at that point, everyone sort of was like, it has to be illustrated. And because I am traditionally published, we get input into the cover, but the final cover is what the publisher decides. We do get input, and in the past, I've gotten input, and I'm not a visual creative person, so I am not. Like, I can't tell you what I like, but if you give me something, I can say whether I like it or not. And that's generally how my other covers have gone. They would give me a picture or something and some options. And I'm like, oh, that's cute. I like this, like that. American Royalty has been different from the very beginning. I knew they were going to come to me and ask what my idea was. And I knew I wanted the cover to remind me of like a magazine cover, because media plays such an important, like a big role in the story. And so I had done my research and I looked at covers with couples and different poses. Even sort of the idea that the letters are sort of in front of the top of his head, like, all of that sort of stuff. I had looked at it and seen and had given them an idea of what I wanted. And I think sort of the idea that I wanted it to look like a magazine cover, and I was clear that I didn't want it to look cutesy, is how we sort of came to what we came with. We had our choice of some artists, and part of choosing the artist was looking at their artwork. And so I tended to stay away from artists who did do stuff that looked a little like what was already on the market. And I was looking for someone who could draw something super realistic. I never in a million years thought that I would get the cover that I got. I think Eric Davila did a phenomenal job. Danny, to me, is the person on the cover, and I know she's not a real person, but honestly, like that's who she is to me. I was blown away. Like it was what I wanted times 1,000. He exceeded all of my expectations.
We're not done with Danny and Jameson's story. I hear you're writing a sequel about them. What was the decision or the process in making the decision to do a sequel on the same couple instead of immediately going into the next couple like so many other romance series do?
Right. And what I do, I've never done this before either. When I pitched the series, and even as I was writing the first draft, it was always the thought that the second book would be a different couple. And so that is why I did what I always do, which is thread other people into the book so that people are, excited. So, online there have been people saying we were getting Professor Thor and Nyla, right? And I be happy to, because that is who initially I thought would be the second book. So people were right to pick up on that, obviously, and of course I was more obvious in the end. But what happened was, as I was writing the first draft, and even the second draft, it just felt like the story was bigger than what I could put in one book. And even though Danny and Jameson end up together and are in love, I didn't feel as if they had done the journey that I typically like for my characters do. I just felt like there was just way too much more, right? So even at the end of the book, you know they love each other, you know they're going to be with each other, but how are they going to make that work? What are they going to do? And it just felt like there was so much story that I still could tap into, and I've never had that feeling before. And so when I was feeling it, and I remember I just was like, it'll go away. Just let's keep working. You have a plan, keep working. And it wasn't going away. And I remember talking to some of my friends and just sort of putting it out there, like, I think the second book might be Danny and Jameson. And I feel like if anyone had said, ooh, no, like if I'd gotten sort of a negative response, maybe I would have been like, okay, you're right. But everybody was like, oh, okay. And so what I did was, right before I turned it in, I sent an email to my editor and I said, I know what I usually do, but this is what I'm thinking. And so you let me know if this is something that that might work. And she got back to me, and she was just sort of like, that is different for you. If you think there's enough story for a second book, okay. And I said, okay, I'm gonna tell you what I'm gonna do. I'm going to write this book as if the second book will be a continuation. And if you like it, we'll continue. And that's what I did. And so the second book, writing it was so hard because I'd never done that before. It was trying to figure out their art, because they still had work to do. It took me a minute to wrap my head around it, and I didn't want to say anything for the longest time. I wasn't sure. I kept thinking they would change their mind and say, you know what, let's pick a new couple. That's why in the advanced reader copies, it doesn't say that that their story continues, because even then I was just like, I don't know, maybe not. Like it was a strange experience, but I'm happy with how the second book turned out.
Does the second book have a title and release date yet?
The second book has a title, which I'm not skipping. The second book, as far as I know, doesn't have a release date yet. I know it's 2023. I just don't know when. I'm assuming it's going to be summer or later in the year, just to give time for everything to happen. And I can't tell you the title, but I will say this. It probably is it. So like just the two books, but I ran into the same issue where I thought that there possibly could be a third book. And so I wrote the draft with how it could end if there was a third book, and then I'll let my editor decide again. They might just say, because it was only a 2-book contract, so they might say, I think this is it. But I thought of something as I was like, ooh, that would be a good way to end it. So we'll see.
Oh, sounds juicy. So if there were to be a third Danny and Jameson book,
Mm-hmm.
Would the Professor Thor and Nyla come in between 2 and 3, or would we have to wait till even further for Thor and Nyla's story?
You know, it's though that's one of those questions that's not up to me. It's, you know, because I am traditionally published. If this was self-pub or indie pub, then I would guarantee that there would be a Thor, Professor Thor, Thor, that there would be a Reese and Nyla book, because I do want to write that story. It's not, and this is, you know, come up with the other 2 series that I've written as well. Is there are other stories I want to tell, but the series are, you know, under contract to publishers, and so it's a matter of getting permission to continue to write these characters. If my publisher does not want to publish that story, I still want to publish that story. So it's just a matter of time, of me getting permission or sort of running the contract out to be able to write that story. But I do. I mean, I want to write that story. I want to write Steph and Liam's story. Like, you know, I have ideas, so we'll see.
Where are you in the process for American Royalty Book 2, we'll just call it? And what else are you working on at this point?
Okay, so the book is written. So I've written my drafts. My editor has it. I'm waiting for her notes so that I can do my revisions. So that is what I'm waiting for. And I think it's coming soon. She emailed me and said, it's coming soon. So that's what I'm waiting for. And then I also am working on a novella for Audible. So that'll be a lot of fun. Excited about that one. But we haven't announced that yet. But I mean, it's happening.
Any hints?
It's not American, like anything American royalty, but it's oh, I don't know what I can say. I probably shouldn't say anything because Audible, Amazon, I don't wanna. It's a take on something that is already existing. I'll say that. An already existing property. It's sort of my take on it. I can say that.
Okay. Audible's doing some interesting stuff lately, so well, I'm very intrigued. Trying to figure out how else I can get this out of you.
I have to be very careful. I'm not telling, but if, you know, when it comes out, if you want to discuss, we can, you know, we can DM and discuss. Yes.
I'm totally here for that. This could be quite interesting.
Interesting. Okay, I will say this. No, I can't. Look at you. You're so good. No. I
mean, I can cut it out and keep a secret.
No. You know, I write romance, which is, you know, that is what I do. But that's interesting. Yeah. That's about
I love this so much.
Yeah. That's about right.
Was there anything else you wanted to talk about?
I don't know.
With American royalty wise, or any of your other books, or whatever.
This is what I will say. In addition to, like, one of the best things about American royalty, you know, which I love, is people finding it and then discovering me. Like, you know, even though I've been writing for a while, they may not have heard of me for, you know, the very reasons we've talked about. There's just so many books and so many great authors. And so what that book and cover has done is sort of introduced me to more readers, a different audience, and I've been so thrilled that they have finished American Royalty and liked it so much that they then will go back and read some of my other books. And so it has been really nice to get sort of messages of people who are reading like the Shades of Love series and like, oh my God, I love this series, or the Girls Trip. Like, that has been that's been really great for me, because for a while it feels like you release a book and then it's gone. Um, and so I love those books as much as I love American Royalty, for, and for different reasons. And so having people discover them has been, that's been, um, it's been great. And I know, like, I'm supposed to be promoting American Royalty, which I do, but I get so excited when, I see those posts of some of the older books. I'm like, yay, I still love them too. Like, I want them all to get together. I would write like I'd have them all go somewhere, like a resort, and then I could write one big story with all of them. I could tie it all together. I could do it.
That would be really fun to like bring in a whole bunch of different kind of story universes into one. Just be like, whoa.
Yes.
Let me serve you a plate of awesome.
Yeah. Be like, this is the Livesay verse. This is all my people.
I mean, if everybody else can have their own universe, why can't you?
Why can't I? Why can't I?
Marvel, DC, Star Wars, Tracey Livesay.
Why not? Why not? I mean, it's lots of love over here. Lots of love over here. That's what everybody cares about in all the other ones anyway, the relationships. Here, you just have relationships. Works for me. I could do it.
It is fun to see like one book get like bubble up and then like all of a sudden everyone's discovering the author's past books.
Yeah.
Like even Tessa Bailey.
Yes.
She's just re-released one of her older books that had like the photo cover with the cutesy cover. So now she's getting like Too Hot to Handle's now back.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, it's great because, like I said, we love most of us love everything we've written, and it's hard to let them go sometimes and move on to different things. And so that has been one of my favorite. It's just, I love the stories I write. I love the characters, and you just want people to enjoy them. And so, and it really it does mean a lot to me when people enjoy my books. I mean, because that's why I do what I do. It really is.
Well, I enjoyed American Royalty, and I know many other people have too. So thank you so much for your time and hanging out with me. This has been an absolute blast.
Thank you for having me. This has been great. You guys have been really great, and I appreciate the offer. You were so cool. You were like, well, you want to talk some more? I was like, girl, do I want to talk some more? Yes.
And if you want to talk some more about other things down the line, you know who to call.
I do. On the list. You are on the list, definitely.
Man, I was so close to getting those details. I'll keep trying though. We've got to get the word out. In the meantime, while we're waiting to learn more about Tracey's future projects, you can check out American Royalty for yourself in the links down below, as well as ways to get a hold of her other books. And don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and tell your friends all about it so we can have more bookish fun together. I'll see you back here next time. Thanks for watching.